Hi everyone, it's Dr. Raj. So on today's show I talked about addiction, and it is one of the largest problems our nation is facing. Alcohol, opiates, prescription painkiller, marijuana, all of it. One thing we clearly know is that when the perception of drug harm comes up, the use goes down. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing the work I do, is because we need to become educated. And as an addiction expert, there's a few things I want to make absolutely sure that you understand. Number one, the brain changes. When somebody goes from using substances, misusing them, abusing them, and then becomes dependent on them, once that brain is dependent, the brain has changed, okay? When did we start finding out about these results? Really within the last 10 to 15 years. So remember, there's parts of the population, even in the medical population, that don't buy into the disease model of addiction. And the truth of the matter is, it is a disease because the entire reward circuitry, how we feel rewarded, changes. Why does it change? Number one, it changes because the brain is flooded with this feel-good substance called dopamine, right? Dopamine makes you feel pleasure when we're talking about addiction. Dopamine makes you feel pleasure. So substances like amphetamines, cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, ecstasy, these club drugs, all of them increase dopamine levels. That's why people say, oh my God, I've never felt this before. I want some more. Makes sense, right? So the brain changes. How does the brain change? The brain is being flooded with this chemical called dopamine. The dopamine goes and binds to its receptor. The brain can't control the amount of dopamine being released because that is linked to what? That's linked to how much drug you're doing or how much alcohol you're consuming, right? However, it can control where the dopamine goes and binds. The more drug you use, the brain says, whoa, I am being way overstimulated in here. Too much dopamine, take the receptors down. And this is the change I'm talking about. The dopamine receptors get down-regulated. Now we have to be careful because once you decide you want to get abstinent, well, now your dopamine receptors have been down-regulated. What does this mean? This means the things that you used to feel pleasure with, activities such as going to the movies or maybe going for a walk on the beach, don't seem so exciting anymore, right? Because you've kind of skewed the system. Those day-to-day activities don't seem as exciting. The dopamine receptors are down-regulated. Now, the brain says, where'd all that dopamine go? This is after you get abstinent. You stop drinking, you stop drugging. The brain says, where'd all that dopamine go? So now what it'll do is it'll start saying, put the receptors back up. But this takes time. And it takes really about 1 year to 2 years. But we start seeing this upregulation at about 3-4 months. That's why statistically, if you can make it to day 90 of abstinence, you have a greater likelihood, a greater chance for long-term sobriety. Now remember, when I say the word sobriety, I'm not talking about just abstinence. I'm talking about abstinence plus the recovery work, right? We've all heard of the word dry drunk. That's somebody who's abstinent, but never did the recovery work, and now is a dry drunk. So you got to do the recovery work. You have to understand what made me even start this behavior. How did this happen? Was it peer pressure? Was it self-medication? Was it performance enhancement? What was really happening here? And with the July 4th weekend coming up, be careful out there. There's a lot of people who say, you know what, that's not me. It can't happen to me. But you know what, people are dying every single day. Particularly, we're seeing a huge problem with the opiates, the painkiller, prescription painkiller medication, right? So we have to be careful and we have to be preventative. Wouldn't it be nice if the problem just was never to be there in the first place? So be careful out there, and if you have a current addiction problem, you can email me at the Dr. Raj, that's THEDRRAJ drraj@gmail.com, and I will give you some feedback and some advice, help you find treatment. But remember, treatment works. Get into treatment. This is Dr. Raj saying, be well.